early advertising is really beautiful. It was intended to get people to keep these around their house. Remember that they needed to go get lactated food for babies. Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go! Good morning, folks. This is George the Antique Nomad. I'm at the West Palm Beach Antique Show, and I've got my booth behind me, but I'm actually not here today to show you my stuff. I'm here to show you my next door neighbors. And the reason I want to show his stuff is that this is Dave DeLongchamp, and he is a specialist in antique advertising, and he gets really great stuff. It's so graphic, it's so vivid, the condition's good. He's a nationally known dealer in the trade. He goes to all the antique advertising shows. So let's see what he's got, because it's the beginning of his season here in Florida. And first of all, in the upper left here, we've got some hard to find pieces, the cardboard boxes for National Repeating Gun and Pistol ammo. That's going to be from the early part of the 20th century, maybe 1920 or so. Below that are Peacocks, which are, well, condom holders, and they are very collectible. Down here, a couple of tobacco packs, and then he's got a really great selection of advertising pieces that are paperweights. These were all done about in 1900, 1910, and they were done all over the country, as you can see, for any kind of product you could imagine, from thread imports to beer pump makers to men's and boys' clothes to clippers, hot water heaters, you name it. If they could get it on a desk in front of you so that you would stare at it, then there was a good chance that maybe you would end up buying. Antique advertising really starts in the era of full-color lithography, about 1870, 1880. We see really vivid, colorful advertising come along, and it becomes rather an art form, and that's why people enjoy it so much today. Graphic design is a big part of collecting advertising. Here we've got Plowboy chewing and smoking tobacco, an old stoneware piece from Bonnie Castle. Behind here, Van Houten's hot chocolate. That's going to be a store container from about 1920. Pinback buttons are a very collectible thing too. These really became popular in the 1890s for everything from advertising campaigns to political campaigns. They were originally done, again, lithography on celluloid. Look at all the great graphics here. And they advertise any number of things. All going out, nothing coming in. Cascarettes did it. That's actually for, well, you can kind of tell what it's for. Cleanup Week, that's Old Dutch Cleanser. And then we get into some bronzes as well. Kitty Kelly, the broadcaster for CBS. You've got them for stores. You've got them for Pabst Blue Ribbon, which is very popular again. A lot of the collectability has to do with what people are interested in now. If you like brewery advertising, then that's where you're going to gravitate towards. If you like kitchen related, you might like the Pillsbury's Best or the baking powder. If you are interested in things from Springfield, Illinois, a lot of these are collected by people who are looking for things from their local area that are no longer there. Speaking of lithography, these Vienna art plates from about 1890 to 1910 were a very popular thing. They're really beautiful. They're done on tin. It's full color lithography. Generally on the back it advertises for a bar or some other location. This particular one is actually for Anheuser-Busch Malt Nutrien. Now, the reason you see them advertising malt is because we're getting close to the era of Prohibition. Some states passed Prohibition earlier than 1919, and a lot of the beer companies ended up producing malt during Prohibition because it was something they could use that equipment for. Hills Brothers Coffee is a nice litho here, a very famous graphic. Next to it, you've got this. This is a tip tray, and I'm going to show you a whole bunch of these because this is something he specializes in. Again, a lot of these are pre-Prohibition, meaning before 1919 if they're beer, and they were to be used to put your tip on when you were in a restaurant. Grain Belt beers, Pale Select, and then you'd see them for other things as well. There's Cudahy's Diamond H hams, that's a great graphic. And then later on, even life insurance gets in on the act. So you see a lot of tip trays. Again, it all has to do with the graphics. Certain ones are going to be more desirable than others. In the post-Prohibition era, after 1933, you see this sort of advertising come along. This is actually I believe Sirocco wood, which is really a pressed plastic that looks like wood. And this is for Altus Lager with the age sealed in flavor. This is going to be from probably about 1950. Very cute. A lot of cuteness comes into beer advertising because I think they realize that you're supposed to be having a good time. So you see a lot of really fun graphics in the 40s and 50s. This guy here, Moses Cough Drops, it's hard to find early lithograph tins for certain products. We see a lot of cleaning products and things like that left because they were things that just sort of lingered in a house. But this, on the other hand, is something that would have been used and thrown away generally. So they're very hard to find and worth, gosh, in the few $100 range. Dave's from Michigan, and he does a lot of shows up there. He does the big ad show in Indianapolis, amongst other things, so he will occasionally get local interest things there. He just found this centerpiece here yesterday. This is the Mr. Peanut wood pin from the 1940 New York World's Fair. Hard piece to find, worth about $30 to $50. A lot of these little advertising premiums were just giveaways. Most of them have been long since lost, thrown away. That's why the ones that are left are desirable now. Here's a cute one for Daisy Leaf Large, shaped like a little frying pan. That's going to be from about 1910 or 20. He also occasionally gets some sporting related. This is what they call a pencil topper. These were really popular in the 50s with kids. You'd collect, sometimes they'd be advertising soda and stuff, but a lot of time they were advertising particular players, like this guy from the Cleveland Indians. We're going to go down to this next case here and see some other advertising premiums. Now, right here, this piece is a celluloid piece which is got the engine lathe on it, and celluloid is a plastic that looks like ivory but actually has been made as plastic since about the 1860s, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's a letter opener. Down here, this is a bookmark advertising Kimball pianos and organs. That's going to be from right around 1900. Use Navarre steel cut Golden Sun coffee. That would have been included in your coffee, and you can see it's priced at $125. Those were all intended to be thrown away, and they all were, pretty much. But there's one that's left. Another good advertising piece here, this letter opener. Weissblock quality. I think I sold that to Dave, actually. I look for things for him because he is a specialist, and specialists are at the top of the market and have better customers for certain things than I do as a generalist. That's part of why antique dealers can sell to each other and everyone still makes money. Day and Night Tobacco is another tip tray, and then this Bayro is a little metal piece advertising a bottle of some sort of I think some sort of a cordial or liqueur. Okay, so in here we've got some fun stuff. Again, more pencil toppers. Union Pacific Railroad is one we see there with the overland route. Paul Parrott shoes. These are little tops. Tops were something that people would get when they bought shoes and stuff for their kids to keep the kids entertained. Most of them were thrown away or lost. Panama is a typewriter ribbon tin. That's another area of collectability. This fellow really likes his tins and metal-related items. Another area that is hard to find, some of the really early little tin lithograph pieces from the teens and 20s for products are very collectible. This is Menon's Senyang toilet powder. They don't make that product anymore, obviously. Tincture of iodine. Poison bottles in general are collectible, and so that's something that I know Dave looks for as well, as do I. And then here's another advertisement for a machinery company. Now let's look at some larger pieces here. Again, this is Sirocco wood on the left for Stroh's, probably from about 1950. On the right we have this wooden box with the lithograph for compound oxygen, which I believe is an early washing powder. And that's a piece from about 1890. It was very popular at that time to show the owners or originators of a product on the packaging in portraiture like this. And they generally were men with very long beards because that was very popular at that time, as it's starting to be again now. Behind here we've got a really good Rit die cabinet. We see a lot of Putnam die cabinets. This Rit piece is not one that any of us have really seen out there, so we think it's quite scarce. She's just got a really lovely face. She is tin lithograph. Judging by the hairstyle, I'd say she dates to probably about 1920 at the latest. This would have been a store-top display in a small country store, and wow, what a great piece. Dave's going to do a political memorabilia show next week here in Florida, so he's got a bunch of Nixon for President advertisements, amongst other things. Coca-Cola advertising is always popular. These are, the top one is a blotter. That's an ink blotter, so most of those were used by people and are gone. And she's from about 1940. You would actually wipe your fountain pen on the back of her so it wouldn't smear the paper that you were writing on. And then on the left, the bottom, the way you're looking at it, the Coke king-size 6-bottle carton. We'll turn the camera so you can see that. When friends drop in, this is a holiday advertisement. This would have been stuck in the cartons with them writing a price in the old corner stores saying how much you were going to pay for your 6-pack. Early lithography was such a big deal, and early advertising is really beautiful. It was intended to be. A lot of this was made like these trade cards to get people's attention, but also to get people to keep these advertisements around their house. So they would make them really attractive, so they were like art. And people would get scrapbooks and fill them with these things, and then they'd remember that they needed to go get lactated food for babies, for example. These babies' lives were saved by lactated food, including Baby Marvin, Mary Helen Halsington, Susie Foster Park, and Baby Wentworth in the middle. Aren't those darling? This is a good piece here. Hires Root Beer Soda Fountain is very collectible. There's a little glare. It's as best as I can do because it's in a mount, but it needs to be because this piece is a paper advertisement, and paper and cardboard really did not always hold up very well, so it's nice to find this in good shape. This is going to be from about 1950. Speaking of beer trays, this is a nice one, probably early post-Prohibition, I'd say 1930s, for Frederick's Premium Beer. Here's a German die cut. Die cuts were done where they would actually, again, it's lithography, but they would be embossed usually. I'll see if I can see how the hair actually seems to curl and rise off the page. That's heat embossing. So they were cut out using a die, mostly done in Germany, and the die would come down and cut it out. It'd be a metal die that would cut the shape. They'd use heat embossing, and then they would print on it. And this is a really nice calendar. These advertising calendars, anyone could have their name put in, and this fellow, Herbert S. Pierce, had his portrait and the information put in, and this of course dates to 1900. Very collectible piece. This one's in a nice old frame to protect it as well. Bottles are very collectible. I will do a video at some point with my cousin who's a bottle digger, and we'll take a look at some of the things he's found. This one that says Mammy with the what they call the cracked ice pattern in the background is a rare piece from about 1930. Next to it we have this Rosenbloom American Brandy. It's actually got the original ceramic top, very hard to find, and the paint is still good on the outside, so you can actually read what it was. A lot of interest in seltzer bottles. These were things that were done where you would put the seltzer in it and then you could get the syrup from, say, the Susanville Coca-Cola Bottling Company in California. This one is also Coca-Cola. This is a rather rare one because it'll be hard to read the Coca-Cola, but I think you can see it on there. And this is Forest Green. This is from about 1910. This is from Winona, Minnesota, and it's the seltzer carbonated water to put in with the Coke syrup. Because for a long time those things were sold separately and you had to have both items in order to actually have a soda. Old beer bottle. This one actually has the original cap, which is nice. And this is from Nelson and Trail, BC, out in the direction of where I go in the summertime. Tobacco tins, of course, are very collectible. This one is a Prince Hamlet in good shape. Again, good color lithography. Lithography on tin made all of this possible. That was a new technology about 1880. This piece, the Bass Company Pale Ale, of course, Bass is from England. They did not go through Prohibition, so this piece probably was made in the 1930s. And then this is a little more modern. This is a Michelin tire stand. The Michelin Man is a very popular advertising collectible. And the Michelin Man as an advertising piece, tire stands are hard to find these days. They've really mostly gone into collections, so definitely of interest. He's got some good signage on the back too. Burger Bohemian Beer. That's an unusual name in beer we don't see often. You see a lot of old regional brands that aren't around anymore. Clico Club Ginger Ale was very popular for a time in the 1930s, and this is a 1942 calendar. Again, very cute graphics, and I'm not sure why a woman wearing short sleeves is carrying an Eskimo dress, baby dressed in mucklucks, but there you go. Doesn't always make sense, it's just fun. Speaking of pre-Prohibition, these glasses are something to look for. People overlook these sometimes at house sales because they think that, oh yeah, it's clear glass and it just has a little etching and who's going to care about that? Well, a lot of people do because these again are advertising beer. These were things that were sold or given away when they were trying to keep Prohibition at bay. So a lot of these are from the 19-teens. They have a satin glass etch. Depending on the brewery, they can be quite rare. And so you really have to take a look and see what brewery it's from. They also did make them for other things such as Orange Crush. And here's Ebling's Extra. And this one in the amber, this frosted beer glass, you know, he's got it priced about $100. These are hard things to find, and I think that that's about the right price for a lot of this stuff. Bartolme's in Rochester. We see a lot of interest in things from Rochester because a lot of Rochesterians seem to get down here for the winter. It's cold up there. Bohemian out of Ontario. Again, they didn't have full Prohibition in Canada. They did, I think, limit it to 3.2 beer for a while. But you'll see more things from Canada and England in the 20s because they were still selling beer and we weren't. On the left here we have, I should show up close, this little door push for Chesterfield. That's a nice sign. He found that for $12 yesterday. It's worth probably $65 to $85. So you can shop at antique shows because not everybody is interested in the same things. In the middle here, these were very popular. Again, often they're in black and white, but factories loved to make big prints talking about all their virtues, showing oblique angle views of the factory, all the different places. Here you see the cabinet shops, truck shops, the car paint shops. This is actually a company that made train cars. And so you see big piles of wood out front, because train cars used to be made of wood. And they have all the information about who the owner and superintendent is, and how many acres. It occupies 18 acres, and we can do this many cars a day, and here's how much capital we've invested. It was very important to them. This is from Dayton, Ohio. I'm sure all of this is long gone now, but it was very important for them back then to show the legitimacy and success of their business in this manner. These would have been printed and given out to important vendors or people working at the offices in the factory to show. This is a nice old tin stamp sign, again embossed, so it's got some dimension to it. Legal Tender Flower. I just like that name. Here we've got a bunch more items of interest. A whole bunch of typewriter tins. Roach Destroyer. That actually, these old some of these old chemical packages are starting to be really collectible. It used to be people didn't really care for these, but it's a different era, and people are a little more interested in, well, ironic things and things that actually show how people really live and the things they have to deal with. So now we see more interest in them. Little miniature beer bottles. I showed some of these in a video of mine. These wooden ones are bottle openers by Fairs out of Indianapolis, I believe, and Schlitz. Battleship brand typewriter ribbon. That's going to show a battleship from about 1915 or 20. Here's a nice old box, speaking of political interest. This is TR, Teddy Roosevelt, and that's an old cardboard box with his visage on it. Here's some pre-Prohibition shot glasses. The one on the right with the stag, which I think you can see the best right here. I sold him, actually, because I knew he has customers for these. I think I sold it to him for 20 and he'll get about 40. This is from Portland, Oregon. It's a fairly obscure beer company, and the stag on it makes it more desirable. He doesn't do a lot of cardboard, but he does pick up pieces if they're in really, really good shape. He's very, very, very picky about condition, as he should be. The collectors of this want premium condition if they can find it, and they will pay for it. Here is a nice soft drink tray. Of course, when Prohibition came, companies had to find other things to make, and in the case of the tin tray companies, they went to soda companies and said, let's make those for you. There's one really cool thing I want to show you here that he's got as well. This was given out by Libby's. This is from about 1930, and this shows it's a toy store, and it shows the various tins of things that Libby's made at that time, all in miniature. This is about a foot tall and 6 inches wide. I believe it's priced about $330. There's someone very interested in this who bought 3 really neat things from him yesterday, a young guy in his 30s, youngish anyway, considering how old this stuff is. It was interesting to see someone who was younger be interested in this, and he spent $600 yesterday and said he will probably come back for this today. It transcends eras. This stuff always is popular, and it always seems to remain so. Limonizer for your garden and lawn and shrubbery. This would be from about 1930. These are cool because they're Old Mason's root beer with the bottle toppers, and these date to about 1950. And bottle toppers can be very collectible as well, especially again for smaller and more obscure brands. Oftentimes they're the ones that are really desirable. I'm going to pull back here so you can see this sign. This is Drink Orange Julep. An orange julep is a delicious looking orange beverage. This again is going to date probably to about 1930. Great graphic. This one's priced at $320. You know, this stuff just isn't easy to find. And Ham's beer. This one is a flip sign If you turn it on right now, it says brewed natural for natural drinkability, but if you go through, you will see that that flips to all sorts of different signs for Hamm's beer, and the Hamm's beer bear is very popular, very collectible. This is probably from about 1970, so a lot newer than most of what he sells, but it's priced $135, and it is definitely worth that price. Hamm's is very popular. And then one piece that he just is bringing in today for the first time, Kermit chewing tobacco. This one's nicely framed. It's round, it's from Chicago, and this is quite an old piece of early lithography. You'll see the dot pattern, things are spread a little wider. Lithography is where everything was broken down into dot patterns and could be printed in 4 colors, and that's why they were able to do these really great graphics, kind of like newspaper print. Of course, who knows what a newspaper is anymore, but you get the idea. And this one is dated, here we go, the year 1873, so this is really early. This is when we're just starting to see this kind of advertising come out. So very early, very scarce piece. And Dave's lucky, he gets a lot of those. Well, it's not just luck, he works hard at it, I'm sure. One last piece I wanted to end on here. This I just enjoy seeing. Here we are in Florida, and this is the second piece I've seen this week that is actually from my original home stomping grounds of Washington State. I'm getting a little glare on it. Let me see if I can lift it up here for you. So this is for Pacific Beer, and you'll notice that Pacific Beer says Mount Tacoma rather than Mount Rainier. Pacific Beer was brewed in Tacoma, Washington, and Tacoma was what the natives called Mount Rainier before we came along and decided it would be Mount Rainier. This piece is again pre-Prohibition. This is going to date to about 1900. They were still fighting in Tacoma to get the mountain recognized as Mount Tacoma, but they lost, and it is now called Mount Rainier. So that makes this doubly interesting because of the history behind the name, as well as the fact that it's an old beer company that went out at Prohibition and was never able to revive itself. Well, it was fun bringing you some of the antique advertising in my friend's booth. It's just such a great visual, interesting, fun category that I really wanted to show you his collection. And I hope to film some more stuff. He's got some things that he's set aside that he's taking back to Michigan for the big antique advertising auction. So hopefully we'll get to show some more of his collection. Meanwhile, I will take my tire chains and go for the time being. It was nice to have you all with us, and we'll talk to you again from antiquing land somewhere soon. Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community, here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.